Hey there, Netrunners, it's me again, and while a lot of things have happened in the Netrunner community since my last video, I have managed to temporarily evade our new Cipher overlords, but instead of running for my life, I'm instead going to go over some of the new cards with you in the new data pack Station 1, while we sit here and wait for Siphy's inevitable Muwul includement. So, why don't we get started? So let's begin with our first card, the Severus Snape Implant. Yes, that is its name now. I refuse to call it anything else. Be quiet. It's a hardware. It's orange. 2 to drop for influence. Click, make a run on R&D or HQ, and trash 2 or more cards from your grip. Whenever you access cards from that server, access 1 additional card for every 2 cards trashed. So, first of all, we've got another sync BRE situation. It only refers to that particular run. It doesn't stack. They should have specified that, but no duh, we all know what it means. Aside from that, flavor-wise, this is incredibly on point for Anarchs. Like, this is what Anarch cards exactly should be. You have a lot of variation, you have a lot of ways to get whatever effect you need, but at a substantial cost to yourself, or at a substantial drop in consistency. So this is what Anarch cards should be. This is how they should be designed. Now, as far as the actual usefulness of this card, not seeing a lot of play for this. So you click, you make a run, you trash 4 cards out of your hand, and you get to legwork / Maker's Eye something. This is in the same faction with Medium and Nerve Agent. Like, this will not see any play ever. It just won't. If you now, granted, I like to be fair. One of my favorite things to do with new cards is figure out ways that they could be useful. So the best use case that I can see for this card is as some kind of glory run card. Like, it is a hardware, it is very hard to get rid of. Even if you get tagged, they're going to have a difficult time getting rid of it. You could drop it for 2 credits early, and then at the start of a turn when you're on match point, you could draw up, throw your whole hand, and make some kind of glory run where you access like 4 cards out of HQ, or make some big R&D run or something. And now it does stack with Medium though, and those type of effects. So will it eke out other cards in your deck? Rationally, no. But if you wanted to try to use this, the only purpose I can see is some kind of like big game-ending glory run cards, like a Singleton or something like that. I mean, it does work with the Conspiracy Breakers, but an awful lot of things work with the Conspiracy Breakers. So overall, I'm giving this card, like an A on flavor, but like probably around a C or D on usefulness. So still, anyway, let's look at the next one. And here we have Clan Vengeance, a 3-cost Anarch resource. It is a clan, so one of the first clan resources. Again, 4 influence. Whenever you suffer any amount of damage, place 1 power counter on it, trash it, trash a card from HQ at random for each power counter on Clan Vengeance. This card occupies a very awkward spot. It is incredibly potent at dealing with a certain corp archetype, specifically the Jinteki 1000 cuts type of thing. But outside of that, it serves very little purpose. Now, the payoff of getting to basically throw your accrued damage back in the corp's face and potentially make them discard, their entire hand is incredibly tempting. And as someone who loves playing Jinteki and loves doing lots of damage lots of times, I am absolutely terrified to see this card across from me if I sit down at the Netrunner table. Like, if you're playing Jinteki and this is like the worst thing for you to see across the table from you. It would be absolutely shitting yourself if someone drops this. But as scared as I am of it, Realistically, not a lot of people are actually going to play it. It'll be pretty rare for this to actually show up unless some kind of constant pinging jinteki strategy becomes really, really popular. Like if Potential Unleash suddenly becomes top tier or something like that. Or, in the 1 month that Breach Dome and Shock and Snare are all legal at the same time. We'll probably see people putting it in their decks then. But, well, again, thematically, very on point. This is very, very Anarch in nature. This is exactly what an Anarch card should be, and I'm glad that it's for influence. This is something only Anarch should have access to. And it's a solid card, but it's so situational and so specific, I really don't see a lot of use for it. At least not across the board. You might see people singletoning it in now and then just because they really hate jinteki, but unless that becomes a huge meta, you're not going to see a ton of Clan Vengeance popping up. So it's a cool card and a powerful card, but it's not going to be particularly popular unless the meta warps itself to demand it. So again, very strong on flavor, and while it is overall better than the implant, it's still probably not going to be used all that much. Solid card though. Side note, this does count any form of damage, which includes any damage you do to yourself. Some things like Stim Hack and Net Ready Eyes and failing a Mad Dash on purpose, so it is possible to put this down, damage yourself a bunch, and then use it on the corp. And I'm sure a lot of people see this card and are thinking that they can do that. However, that is a lot of damage you have to do to yourself in order to throw it back at the corp, and you would absolutely have to build your deck around that. So it's not just something you can throw in. So, I mean, you could do that. It does work, but most of the time, I highly doubt it's going to be actually worth it. Like, even if you make one nifty clutch play every now and then, like the amount you have to sacrifice to get that to happen, most of the time is going to set you back more than the payoff is worth. So, again, neat mechanic, but probably not that great in the end. And for the last Anarch card in the pack, we have Counter Surveillance. Now, this one's interesting. It is another clan resource, so we're getting more of those. 3 influence, 1 to drop. Click, trash, make a run. If successful, instead of accessing, pay X to access up to X cards from this server. If able, X is the number of tags you have. So, first of all, this is another card that is reinforcing this cycle's idea of making Anarchs the token Tagme faction. Like, we've already seen a few spoiled, we've already had a few come out. This is just further enhancing Anarchs as we are the faction that likes being tagged. We have cards that let us do stuff based on how many tags we have. Obviously, that highly encourages Anarchs to build Siphon decks, which may not put the greatest feeling in the pit of your stomach, but it is still a thing, and let's not kid ourselves, Siphon is going to be one of the most reliable ways to make use of these Tagme cards. Now, this one in particular rewards having lots of tags with giving you multi-access, which is a very, very strong payoff. Multi-access is incredibly powerful. Now, this is a resource in of itself, so if you're tagged, it can be blown up. So obviously, you don't drop this on the board and then start siphoning people or things like that. You keep this in your hand, and it's essentially a double. Just pretend this is a double event, because that's what it is. One interesting note, though, is while the payoff is very, very strong, it has been confirmed in the unofficial FAQ that you must pay exactly X. You cannot pay up to X. If you have 10 tags, you must pay 10 credits in order to see 10 cards. You cannot pay 5 and see 5. You have to pay the full number of tags you have, which actually makes this card a lot harder to use and a lot more interesting. because you can't just go completely balls out, tag myself as many times as I possibly can. You actually have to have just the right number of tags. You have to have enough where you get a big deep dig out of it, but not so many tags that you can't actually pay for the card's effect. Now obviously again, Siphon gives you tags and gives you a bunch of money, so that's perfect for this. But that does add an extra nuance to the play, because if you make the run and you have 10 tags, and after the run you only have 8 credits left, this just fizzles entirely. So it does take a bit more nuance than it at first looks like it does. But if Anarch Tagme and Anarch Clan are going to be the new thing that Anarchs do, A, I'm totally okay with that, and B, this is definitely the kind of card they should have to pay them off for that. Just be very, very careful of getting closed accounts, because that will make you a very sad little orange panda. Also, this replaces medium, it does not add to it, keep that in mind as well. Alright, next we've got a criminal card, Mobius. I have no idea what those two little dots are supposed to make me say, but I'm just going to call it Mobius. So, Moby Dick here is a run event, 0 cost, 1 influence, so it's dirt cheap. Make a run on R&D. If successful, you may make another run on R&D when this run ends. If the second run is successful, gain 4 credits. So, right off the bat, we are obligated to compare this to Data Breach, which is a card that came out last cycle that is a Shaper card that does literally the exact same thing. It just doesn't give you the money, so it's objectively worse in every way. Why they did that, I really don't know. They were designed by different lead designers, so maybe that has something to do with it. But honestly, I believe that Mobius here was put in Criminal just to make the other two factions that are more likely to make use of it have to pay influence to get an effect this strong. Because criminals are not the ones who usually rely on R&D multi-access, or you could say that this encourages criminals to start playing medium, which is a thing that's already happening. And yes, Mobius is incredibly powerful when paired with medium, but that's not the only thing it's good for. Like, this card is deceptively good. It sounds good at first, but it's actually even better. If you're playing criminal, the first thing the Corp will do every single game is Ice HQ. Like, you just accept that's going to happen when you play blue. It's what happens. If they leave R&D open, which is not unlikely, then this is a dirty laundry, but better, because there's the off chance that you will trash something or steal something off the top of R&D and then get to go again and see something else. So it's strong early game. Mid and late game, once you get a medium on the board, this is just stack it on Temujins, just make and your Desperados, and just make a bajillion money while you just hammer R&D relentlessly with your mediums. So whether you do that by putting medium in criminal or by putting this in Shaper and Anarch, this card is deceptively good. Now that one influence does make it a little tricky to squeak in. After all, influence and deck slots are incredibly tight these days, but this card is an incredibly good incentive to put more orange cards into blue decks. Like, I would not be surprised if people started to run, medium Mobius Ken Tenma, because this is a really good card for that. Now, one thing to be taken into account, the second run has to work before you get the money. So if you just try to go a little too careless with this, and that second run you can't quite make it, you might end up getting slapped in the face with a few things. So yeah, be a little careful that you are sure you can make 2 runs, but outside of that, this is a very effective low-cost card that will maybe not create new strategies, but will definitely sprinkle some new power on top of them. So, solid card. Alright, next we've got a new criminal ID. This man here is Los, the Data Hijacker. He is a 4515, 0 link. He is a Gmod. The first time the Corp reses a piece of ice each turn, gain 2 credits. So this, right off the bat, reminds you a lot of the core set Identity game, where you do something and you get 2 credits. I would honestly say that Los is probably a little bit better than Gabe, because while Gabe requires you to specifically hit HQ over and over and over again, which thereby incentivizes the corp to just pile more ice in front of HQ and make trying to get your ID proc, less beneficial. Los works on any piece of ice. So if you are playing Criminal, you are typically being super aggressive. You are making the corp want to res ice all the time, and when the corp resing ice gives you money, that puts the corp in a really obnoxious position where, by trying to keep you out, you help the runner, and that's a really annoying place for the corp to be. This is, taken even further when you look at cards like Forged Activation Orders, which just puts the corp in a really, really annoying, bad decision or worst decision kind of predicament. And I think that's the kind of pressure that criminals are really good at and really should have. So I like that theme, and it is a generic effect, like just getting money. So you could say that the IDs that are just generic get money effects are a little boring, but I think it's been proven many a time by many an ID, looking at you, Purple, that having money is really, really, really important and really, really effective. So given the ability to produce money by doing what you're supposed to be doing anyway, and putting your opponent in an uncomfortable position whereby trying to defend themselves, they give you more momentum, is definitely a criminal thing. It's definitely something that they can synchronize with a lot, because they have all the D-res effects. So you just D-resing ice over and over again, then making them res it in order to give you money. Look at Vanilla. Look at Vanilla. How is the corp going to feel resing a Vanilla to give you 2 credits? And then that's just silly. So we'll see just how far Los goes. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a lot of decks specifically built around, oh my god, Los is so powerful, but he's an ID that further enhances what criminals already like to do. So he'll be, the usefulness of Los in the meta will be directly linked to how good criminal cards in general are. Especially after things like Andromeda rotate out. Like, this is one that's definitely going to get looked at a lot for what ID people will slap on top of all their blue decks. So I'm hopeful for Los. Like, he's definitely a solid pick. He's definitely an ID that is very straightforward, but definitely teaches you what criminals are good at and how to play criminals. So he's a solid ID. I like him. Yeah, I like him. Alright, now we've got System Seizure, which is the first Shaper Current we've had in quite some time, because it is the second Shaper Current we've had ever. But anyway, it's 0 to play, it's 1 influence. You all know what the current rules are. The first Icebreaker whose strength you increase each turn does not return to its base strength until the end of the run. So with this little laser barfing lion thing, I'm not sure exactly what that's supposed to be. You'll just call it the laser lion from now on. What this does is it takes the first Icebreaker that you boost each turn and gives it the Gordian Blade effect, where its strength doesn't go back down after it passes that piece of ice. Now, on its face, that sounds great, because this is a 0-cost card that sits out on the field for hopefully a couple of turns and saves you money consistently over the course of the game. So it sounds like a good thing, but most of the time it's not really going to be that great, because it's only the first Icebreaker you boost. You do not get to pick which Icebreaker it is. So how useful this is on a normal rig is very much in the control of the corp. So if the corp just doesn't stack icebreakers of this, doesn't stack ice of the same kind behind each other with the strongest ice in front, then this really isn't going to do much of anything other than just being a current. However, this is a 1 influence card that significantly increases the effectiveness of rigs that only use one main icebreaker. So basically AIs is what I'm talking about. This is a really good icebreaker to include in any AI-based decks, something like Eater or Overmind or Faust or something like that, where you have one breaker and you know that the first time you boost this thing's strength each turn, it doesn't go back down. So in an AI-based deck where you're putting all your eggs in one breaker basket, this is going to do a lot of economic work and save you a lot of money. Now that does mean that this is a current that you just plop out there for the effect rather than one that you drop at an opportune moment or for the purpose of wiping out someone else's current. So I think that currents kind of fall into those two categories. You're either ones that you just slap out there and hope they stay around because they give you some kind of benefit, or there's ones that you specifically save for a certain moment. This is definitely the former of those two, but in the right deck, this definitely is a strong contender for a current to look at having, because that will save you a lot of stuff over the course of the game. Alright, now we've got Customized Secretary. It's a 2-cost 1MU shaper program, 2 influence. When you install Customized Secretary, reveal the top 5 cards of your stack. You may host any number of revealed programs from your stack on it, shuffle your stack, click Install a hosted program paying all install costs. This is actually pretty underwhelming, honestly. I mean, it sounds an awful lot like a shaper version of like Street Peddler or Rolodex, and in a lot of ways it is. And it also seems like it kind of shares a theme with the upcoming Ayla identity from Terminal Directive. But this is just not a very good card. It really isn't. You pay 2 credits to install it. It takes up an MU. You reveal the 5 cards to your deck so that your opponent knows what they are. It only works on programs. And then even after you do that, you have to spend a click to get the program, and you have to pay the full cost. So you're still spending extra clicks, you're still spending extra credits, you're not getting any kind of discount or any real acceleration. Like, why would you play this over, Diesel or Quality Time, where you just, in that one click, just get all the cards in your hand right away? I mean, it's just not particularly good, and there's no surprise factor like there is with Street Peddler, because your opponent gets to see all the cards that you revealed. So I mean, it's not the worst thing, but I'm really not seeing this going anywhere. Last up for the runner side is Build Script, which is a 1 influence 0 cost neutral event that just says gain a credit and draw 2 cards. Alright, that's pretty freaking generic there. And again, just like with Mobius and Data Breach, we have to talk about Build Script and Deuces Wild, Dan D'Argenio's card. And I have heard from the grapevine that Dan is more than a little bit salty at just how similar his card and this card are. But really, if you look at the two, it's quite obvious that Deuces Wild is just flat out superior to Build Script in every way. Like, it just is. There's literally no reason to play Build Script as long as Deuces Wild exists. So his card is still clearly the better card. Though really the only problem here is that they both cost 1 influence. Like, Build Script really should be like 0 influence. If that were the case, I'd be totally fine with both of these cards being a thing. But if they're both an influence, like, why would Build Script ever find a deck slot over Deuces Wild? And I'm kind of confused, honestly, with a lot of the design choices on 1 influence neutral cards. Like, I don't understand how so many cards like Deuces Wild and Build Script and Pieces in Our Time are 1 influence, but things like Mad Dash aren't. But I guess the reasoning behind it, as far as I can tell, is if they print a whole bunch of cantrip-style cards that are neutral, no-influence cards, that maybe it'll become too oppressive to have, decks that are just chock full of nothing but draw cards and get money, and then you just have hyper-aggressive decks that set up, crazy fast just by, drawing a bajillion cards and getting a bajillion money every turns they can get their combo. Best I can tell, that's their thinking behind putting like 1 influence and all these little cantrip-style neutral cards. which could be right, could be right. So for 99% of the time, build script is just binder fodder. There's no reason to play it. Unless maybe with a certain ID like one of the mini IDs like Sunny, you could go ahead and put in like 3 build scripts and 3 Deuces Wild and 6 exclusive parties and still have 13 influence left and just get a bunch of money and cards super fast and set up a lot faster than normal. Maybe that would be worth trying. I don't know. But that's about the only time I could see playing build script ever. So yeah, this one's pretty much filler fluff. But anyway. Now, on to the corp cards. First up, we've got a card that was spoiled a while back, Sadir Adaptive Barrier. It's a HB, 1 influence, barrier, obviously. 4 to res, 2 strength, that's a pretty crappy ratio. But it gets +1 strength for each piece of ice protecting this server. And it is 1 subroutine that is end the run. So first off, yes, it does count itself. So as soon as you res it, it is a 3 strength barrier. Then obviously there's 2 pieces of ice, now it's a 4 strength barrier, which means it's the equivalent of Bastion. So you need at least 3 pieces of ice on the server this is in for it to be better than something like, say, a Bastion or a Mother Goddess or something like that. So it does fit HB's theme of having like an upfront investment that plays out longer into the late game and gives a really big tanky server. But I really don't feel like this is going to make any deck slots anytime soon, even at 1 influence, because let's not kid ourselves. The Seafer Overlords are circling overhead. They might just find me soon. Please send help. But it's a solid, like, generic kind of card. Like, this is something, it's not bad, it's just not quite as good as the things we'd like to see. But it's a decent filler that does fit the faction. So anyway, on to the next card, which is a new piece of ice called Nerine 2.0. And no, there is no Nerine 1.0, which bugs me more than it probably should. But it is a 3 influence HB ice, 6 to res, 4 strength code gate, so not bad. It's a 2.0, so it has the double click to break 2 subs thing, and its 2 subroutines are deal 1 brain damage, the corp may draw a card, and ditto. So this is actually really nice. I really like this one, and this goes alongside with the recently released Z 2.0 to be a double click to break ice that is really, really nasty to face check. So if you're trying to build any kind of like brain damage deck, especially one with baddie in it, this would be a very strong auto include, because this is something that is probably one of the best pieces of brain damage dealing ice in the game. Save for like Brainstorm, I think that's probably the best, but it's also super expensive. The only real weakness I see behind this card is that it's just known to run first click against HB. Like this, the face check value of this is super duper high, but so often people are just going to click through it because they're just used to running early against HB for that fact. So I don't know, I really want to like this card, and I really want to build, you know that jank dream of the brain damage deck that actually works. But I don't see it seeing a lot of play unless we get more cards that support a brain damage type deck. But definitely a fan of this card. I got no problems with it. So I would definitely like to see more ice like this for HB. And last for HB, we've got Load Testing. Very interesting card. It is one of the extremely rare 5 influence cards in the game, and I am totally okay with that. It is a 0 cost operation that says when the runner's next turn begins, he or she loses a click. So this is definitely interesting. So what this card does, now disappointingly it does not work with that new ID that's coming out, because they have to lose the click during the run, so that's annoying, otherwise it'd be absolutely perfect for it. But what this card does is allows you to pressure the runner at just the right time. I don't think it's something that fits like tossed into a generic HB deck or something like that. It's like, don't just try to singleton it into a regular deck. I think if you really want to make this deck worth it, you need to put multiple copies in and make a deck based around like denying the runner as many clicks as possible. So things like enhanced login protocol and stuff like that, where you could just like recur this as many times as you can, and then just keep barfing it out in order to gradually lose the runner tempo and momentum because they're gradually losing clicks they don't want to lose. Or probably a more difficult but stronger use of the card would be to use it at just the right time to rob the runner of being able to click through your bioroids. So let's say probably in the early to mid game when the runner doesn't have their full rig out yet and they're mostly clicking through things to get through your ice, like drop a Fairchild 3, put a agenda behind it or something important, and then drop a load testing so that the runner literally cannot get through, you know, your Fairchild 3 or your Turing or your whatever. So I think that's probably overall the best use for this card, is either using it at just the right time to prevent the runner from being capable of clicking through your bioroids, or maybe just find a deck that just spams it a lot and other such cards that way to gradually wear the runner down. So in the late game they're just way behind on tempo with you, which is, again, that's very much what HB does, is sit in their little turtle shell and wait out the long game, that then your runner's just way behind. And I definitely think this card takes a little bit of nuance to use, but I definitely like it, and I like that it's 5 influence. So definitely a fan of this card too. Good job. Alright, next up we've got the Jinteki red cards. So here we go. Codegate, Bloom, 2 influence, 2 res, 3 strength. You may install a piece of ice from HQ protecting another server and ignoring all costs. Then another sub, you may install a piece of ice from HQ in the next innermost position protecting this server, ignoring all costs. So this is a lot like a Jinteki version of like Builder or something like that, or Architect, where it allows you to install things rather than directly hurt the runner. It just increases your tempo. Now it's 3 strength and 2 subs, so that's not the hardest to break, and it does get yogged, which is bad. But it allows you to install a piece of ice in another server and then make the server that it's in bigger. So I think this definitely belongs on something like a central server that's going to get run a lot, and as a threat, like, you have to break this or this server is going to get harder and harder to get into. Unfortunately, I don't really think there's going to be a ton of Jinteki decks that use this that much, because, you know, Jinteki typically doesn't run the highest amount of ice, and the ice has to come from HQ. It can't come out of archives or deeper into your deck like it can with Architect. So, I mean, it's not bad, but I'm not seeing this finding a lot of use, because it would have to be in a Jinteki deck that has a lot of ice in HQ all the time. And that doesn't seem to happen a lot. So there might be a way to make this useful, but I haven't seen it yet. I'll keep out hope. If someone can make this ice work, that's great, but I'm not seeing a lot of play for it right now. Now, next up is a much more interesting card, at least to me, Replanting. This is a double operation. It's 1 to play, it's 3 influence, so it takes 2 clicks. Add one of your installed cards to HQ, then install 2 cards from HQ, ignoring all costs. So we've got ourselves a shenanigans alert right here, folks. That's what this is. This is shenanigans enabling kind of nonsense. That's what this is for. Now, I do believe that the upcoming ID has some specific synergy with this card, but at least just right off the bat, this definitely works in Jinteki's like shell game, trap-laden nonsense kind of play style. So let's say you put down a snare or a psychic field or something like that, and they just don't run it. Alright, you can use this, add it back to your hand, and then install 2 cards from your hand back down. They could both be psychic fields. They could be 2 agendas. They could be the same psychic field you put down and a pad campaign. Or you could use that card, put it back in your hand, and just drop 2 pieces of ice on a server, saving yourself a couple credits on install costs. I mean, there's a lot of board state rearranging nonsense that you can do with this kind of card. Now, granted, this card is really only as strong as you can mind game your opponent into it being, which is kind of how a lot of Jinteki cards work. So you kind of have to make this work by screwing with your opponent's head. And I do like that about Jinteki. That's why I like playing with Jinteki cards. but this isn't something that you can just pick up and play for its base value. You got to get creative with this, but it does have a lot of potential to do a lot of crazy things. It can uninstall your ice. Don't forget that. You can uninstall a piece of ice and then reinstall new ice, or reinstall the same piece of ice and make your opponent like not want to run that server, even though it's just the same vanilla that was there the last time. So I don't know if any big strategies are going to come out of this, but this is definitely a fun card that you can get really creative with and mess with your opponent in a lot of ways, and I really like that. So I'm definitely looking forward to just messing with people. Just shenanigans. Next up for NBN, we've got CPC Generator, a 0 to res, because all NBN cards are 0 to res. 2 to trash, 3 influence asset. It is an advertisement, so you Spark fans have something to play with. The first time the runner spends a click to gain a credit each turn and not through a card effect, gain a credit. So this is sort of like a corp equivalent to Gorman Drip, and like Gorman Drip, it's not really that good. It sounds good at first, but especially with how much money runners are running around with Temujins and Siphons and all that nonsense going on right now, I really don't think there's going to be a lot of times when you see the runner clicking for credits. And even if you do, they're probably going to spend, a couple of clicks in one turn doing it so that they can play their sure gamble or put down their Temujin or something like that. You are not going to see the runner consistently click for credits turn after turn after turn after turn. You're just not. You really just aren't. Now, maybe, again, in a Spark deck, this obviously has more value, but even then, it's probably not one of the best choices. So it's not a bad card, and it definitely gives the Corp like an equivalent I get credits when you're already doing badly kind of effect like Gorman Drip, but I'm really not seeing this getting played anywhere, though it does have some fantastic flavor text. Next, we've got a new piece of yellow ice called Free Lunch, which reminds me, do not eat the yellow ice. But it is 3 influence, it is 3 to res, it is a code gate, it is 4 strength. It has 2 subroutines that are both place 1 power counter on it, and you can remove a hosted power counter to make the runner lose 1 credit. So what I think of right away is that this is NBN's replacement for the soon-to-cycle pop-up window. Now, it may not be as universally useful as pop-up window was. After all, it's 3 to res instead of 0, so that's pretty weird. I'm not sure why it's 3 to res. But the thing is, whereas pop-up window automatically happens every time, this one, if you just use the power counters right away, has the same effect. It's a 2-credit swing. It just makes the runner lose 2 credits like Pup or Fairchild 1 or something like that. However, the hidden power of Free Lunch is that you can save up those counters and use them when you want. So you can either use this as a kind of expensive but still competent, constant tax that keeps costing the runner 2 credits to get through this, but it costs more for them to actually break the ice. Or you can put this on a server that's getting run over and over again, and you can save it up for a really important moment, like say when they're right about to run into another piece of ice somewhere in a different server. You can drain all their credits and keep them from being able to break it. Or maybe right before you do a big fat trace, like a mid-seasons or something like that, you can, before you do that, eat all the counters in this and make the runner lose, like 8 credits or something like that. And that is a really actually intimidating threat. So if you were to put this on like your R&D when your runner is going medium and they just keep hitting this over and over and over again, that makes something like a mid-seasons threat really, really scary, because even if they're running Temujin and all that, if you can make them lose, like 8 to 10 credits before you mid-seasons them, that's going to make a big fat difference. So it's gonna take some getting used to, but I think this card has potential, not in every deck, but I think it does have a place in some decks, and I do like the design of this card, so I'm definitely interested in seeing what people do with this. So last for NBN, we have the card that all the Corp players are waiting for, MCA Informant. This is a terminal operation, so it ends your turn when you play it. 2 influence, 4 to play, so that's a bit expensive. Install MCA Informant on a connection as a hosted condition counter with the text, the runner is considered to have 1 additional tag. The host connection gains click 2 credits, trash this card. So thematically, what's happening is that one of the runner's friends, one of their connections, is ratting them out to the corp. They have a mole in their system, and that's really cool flavor-wise. And the thing is, right off the bat, let's just get this out of the way. This kills Aaron Marin. Okay, that's what everyone thought the first nanosecond that they saw this card. This kills Aaron Marin, and it does. And so many MCA informants will be put on so many Aaron Marins that I hope they make it canon lore. But that aside, there's lots and lots of really powerful connections that this is going to be really good on. Things like Film Critic, for example, or the Supplier, which I like a lot. But what this does is this forces the runner to find their mole and kill their traitor. The runner has to trash their own card. The corp does not get to trash it. The runner gets to trash their own card. Though the corp can trash it because the runner is considered to be tagged. And yes, considered to have one additional tag, 0 + 1 = 1. If you have this on your connection, you are permanently tagged. And you might think, like for something as strong as Aaron Marin, you might think to keep that. But with all the tag punishment that exists, you can be closed accounts, all your other resources can be killed, you can be scorched earthed, there's so much punishment going around. And even if you don't kill it yourself, if it's something strong like Aaron Marin, you're tagged, the corp can still blow it up themselves. So this very much punishes you for having powerful connections on your board. And that is something that the game really needs right now because Aaron, and a few other things, but mostly Aaron, let's be honest, are really, really strong right now. Now, it has been pointed out that there is, in fact, one corp connection in the game, and that's corporate troubleshooter. So it is possible for the corp to play an MCA informant on their own corporate troubleshooter and effectively permatag the runner, which is silly. However, it's not really that bad because, like I said, it is a terminal operation, so no matter what you do, the runner at the very least can credit trash their own connection, or in the case of corporate troubleshooter, the runner still has an entire turn to just go trash corporate troubleshooter, which is not difficult to trash. So you definitely have some time to react to this. So it is definitely a good card. It is definitely a card that was, specifically designed to come out and deal with Aaron. There's no way they didn't specifically do this to take care of Aaron after releasing Aaron. But there's a lot of other cards this will be very important to take care of as well. So this is a strong, useful counter card that a lot of people are really happy to see and definitely belongs in the game right now. So definitely a good thing to be printed. Anyway, onto the Wayland cards. We've got Clyde Van Wright, who is 2 to res, 3 to trash, 2 influence. He is an asset, an executive. When your turn begins, the runner must either pay a credit or trash the top card of their stack. So first of all, I hope they make a card named Bonnie. I don't care what it is, I just want it to be named Bonnie. It could be an ice or an operation, I want that flavor to happen. Please make that happen. As far as the card itself goes, that's an interesting card. It's not bad. It's obviously a gradually tax the runner down kind of card, and most of the time the runner is going to pay the credit, especially with how rich runners are right now. And they definitely want to pay the credit more than lose an entire card off the top of their deck. So I'm really not sure what kind of deck archetype this would fit into right now, other than maybe like a potential Unleashed deck or something we could put out like Hostile Infrastructure to make it even more annoying to to trash this card. It does work with it upcoming Scorpios ID and Terminal Directive, but still, like for 2 influence, it's going to be a little tricky to splash into other corps, and even in Wayland, I don't know how well it's going to slot into existing decks or even the new decks. So it's a card I want to like, and I hope it finds a home. But at the moment, I'm not really seeing it making the cut just yet. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with this card. Next up, we have a new code gate called Watchtower. This is 4 to res, it's 3 strength, it's 3 influence. It has 1 subroutine that says search your deck for a card and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. So, tutoring cards is definitely a big Wayland thing, and this is a really nasty face check for the corp to get early game, and it might be kind of an undervalued ice. I mean, it doesn't end the run, it doesn't damage the runner immediately, it doesn't give you a immediate credit swing or anything like that, but I wouldn't underestimate the value of the Corp getting to take any card out of their deck. They don't even have to reveal it and put it in their hand. Like, that is something you really do not want to fire more than once, especially if the Corp is on some kind of kill plan or fast advance plan, because then they can get those pieces in their hand to end the game really quickly. I don't know how much I'll actually see this card, but I think it's a little better than people might be giving it credit for. Granted, it is 4 to res, that's a bit expensive, and 3 strength, 1 sub is not that hard to break, so we'll see. We'll see. I think it's a little better than it might be getting credit for, but I'm not crazy about it. However, I do really want to know what in the flying hell that flavor text is supposed to mean. I'm sure that's some kind of programming code or some crap like that. Would someone please tell me what that means? Last, we've got a new piece of Jemison support called Sacrifice. This is 0 to play operation. It's 1 influence. As an additional cost to play it, forfeit an agenda. Remove 1 bad publicity per agenda point that the forfeit agenda was worth. Gain 1 credit for each bad publicity removed. Now, this is very, very clearly just for Jemison. That's all this is for. Outside of Jemison, this is pretty crap, actually. Like, forfeiting an entire agenda to remove 1 bad publicity and then gain 1 credit, like, that's pretty ass. But in Jemison, this is perfect, and this is called It's Sacrifice, and we are getting, I do believe, cards specifically named Sacrifice, Audacity, and Success, so the Jemison tagline. But this actually works really, really well in Jemison because typically the cards you're going to be scoring to get your 1-pointers to sacrifice into other stuff are going to be Hostile Takeovers, which give you bad publicity, and bad publicity is, well, bad. So this is a card that, on your own command, not only activates your ID ability, but also removes that bad publicity and gives you a little bit of money left, which doesn't seem like much, but it does guarantee you the ability to normal advance your card at least once. So I don't know how many copies of this you'll put in Jemison, but it is definitely handcrafted for that deck and that deck alone, and I am glad to see it because Jemison is a really cool and interesting ID, and I definitely want to see more support for that, so all for this card. And last but not least, we have Self-Adapting Code Wall. This is a neutral piece of ice. It is 3 to res, 1 strength. It's a barrier. It's got a single ETR. And the strength of Self-Adapting Code Wall cannot be lowered. So congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Corp. It's a baby Lotus Field. And that's about it, really. It's a miniature Lotus Field for no influence, which is not a bad thing. But with how incredibly obnoxious Parasite is right now, I think we were all hoping for something a little bit better than a non-destructible gear check. But don't worry. There is lots of much bigger, much nastier anti-parasite ice coming in the near future. So just consider this like an appetizer, if you will, of the parasite hate that is on the way. But still, not complaining about it, glad to have it. And I would like to point out that the flavor text is really, really depressing for the runner's side, because just think, it's kind of like what Anarchs are like right now. Like, if they're so used to blowing up everything that a 1 strength, 1 subroutine ice is such a problem for them, they don't know how to deal with it, and they have to blow up their entire rig. So that's just kind of funny. But still, this is a decent card, and it will definitely see some amount of play. Be ready to see this in decks. And there we go. That is Station 1. Overall, I think it's a really solid data pack. It's got a lot of nifty, interesting things in it. It's got some nice, powerful counter cards. It's got some things that establish upcoming archetypes. So I think it's definitely a pack that helps show the direction that the design is going for Netrunner over the next couple of months or so. So I'm really interested to see where the rest of this cycle and where Terminal Directive takes us, and just to find out how the game unfolds for us for the next while. I know things have been a little rough lately with Aaron and Cipher and all that, but I think this shows that the design team is fully aware of that, and that they are definitely going to be giving us a lot of tools to deal with those things in the near future. So definitely a fan of this data pack, and thank you and good night.